Welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to get literary?
Always.
Today we're going to be talking about Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and
Oh, a classic.
a classic indeed. But we're not going to be talking about the monster
Right.
or the plot points or anything like that. We're going to be looking at the style, the literary techniques that Shelley used
Okay.
to make this story so captivating.
I like it.
So one of the most interesting things about Frankenstein is that it's not a straightforward narrative.
Right.
At all, right? He uses a technique called a frame narrative, which is essentially a story
Story within a story.
within a story. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how does that play out in Frankenstein?
Well, so imagine this. You're on a ship,
Okay.
trapped in ice in the Arctic,
Oh, boy.
and you encounter this scientist
Okay.
who starts telling you this absolutely wild tale about his creation and its deadly consequences.
Oh, okay.
And that's exactly the kind of world that Shelley draws us into. So we begin with Robert Walton, who is an explorer, and he's writing letters to his sister about this strange man he's encountered, Victor Frankenstein.
So we're not hearing this story directly from Victor or the creature.
No.
We're getting it secondhand through Walton's letters.
Exactly. It's all filtered through his perspective, his voice.
But that adds like a whole other layer to it.
Exactly.
Like, are we getting the whole truth?
Yeah, and that's one of the really ingenious things about this frame narrative.
Okay.
It's like those Russian nesting dolls,
I love those.
right? You open one and there's another and another.
Right.
And that's what Frankenstein is like.
Oh.
Walton's story contains Victor's story, which contains the creature's story, and then back to Victor, and then ultimately back to Walton.
Whoa, my head's spinning.
Yeah, and so this structure, it creates this distance between us, the reader, and the events themselves.
Oh, okay.
It adds layers of unreliability.
That makes us question everything.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that.
You got it. And to your point about unreliability, Victor even admits to like changing parts of the story he's telling Walton.
Yeah, didn't he say he was correcting and augmenting or something like that?
Yeah, correcting and augmenting.
It makes you wonder, is this really what happened?
Right, and it makes you think about how we consume stories and information in our own lives.
It's true, like, whose voice are we listening to?
Exactly.
And how does that shape our understanding of events?
Yeah,
That's such a relevant point, even today.
I think so.
Like with the news, right? Different sources can present different narratives of the same event.
Absolutely. And I think Shelley was very aware of this idea of perspective and how it influences our interpretation of truth.
It makes you wonder, what was she trying to say about truth and storytelling?
Yeah, was there even like one objective truth to the events in Frankenstein?
Who knows? But it definitely makes you think.
It does. And you know, this whole thing with starting with Walton,
Yes.
Shelley really achieved something beyond just making us question everything.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What else is going on here?
Well, think about Walton for a second. He's ambitious,
He is.
driven by this thirst for discovery, right? Just
Right.
like Victor.
Kind of reminds me of Victor, yeah.
Yeah, and he even mirrors some of Victor's flaws.
Oh, interesting.
So this parallel, it really subtly sets the stage for some of the major themes of the novel Ambition Isolation, the potential consequences of unchecked desires.
It's like Shelley saying, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly, right. From the very beginning, she's hinting at this dark side to the pursuit of knowledge.
It's like a warning.
Yeah, a subtle warning woven into the very structure of the story.
So the frame narrative isn't just a stylistic choice.
No, not at all.
It's like the foundation of the entire novel.
Absolutely. It sets the tone, it introduces those key themes, and it primes us, the reader, to engage with the story on this much deeper level.
We're not just passively reading, we're actively questioning and analyzing.
Exactly.
So we've got Walton telling Victor's story, but wait, there's more.
There's always more.
We also hear from the creature himself.
We do.
So it's not just a story within a story. It's a story.
Within a story within the story.
Within a story, exactly.
Yeah, Shelley takes it to a whole other level.
That's intense.
And this is where things get even more interesting, because now we have multiple narrative voices, each trying to sway our sympathies.
Ooh, okay.
You know, Victor paints himself as this victim of his creation,
Right.
while the creature emphasizes his loneliness, his rejection, and he argues that this is what led to his monstrous acts.
So who are we supposed to believe?
Right. It's like this literary tug of war,
It's true.
trying to figure out where our sympathies should lie.
But isn't Victor also a victim in a way?
That is a great point.
He suffered a lot too.
Absolutely. And Shelley does a masterful job of allowing us to see the humanity in both Victor and the creature.
Even though they've both done terrible things.
Exactly, despite their flaws, despite the horrific events that unfold.
So it's not so black and white.
Not at all. And by giving the creature a voice, Shelley's doing something really powerful.
What's that?
She's challenging the traditional power dynamics of storytelling.
How so?
Well, typically the creator's voice is the dominant one.
I guess that makes sense.
But in Frankenstein, we're forced to confront the creature's perspective, to see him not just as a monster, but as a complex being with his own emotions and motivations.
It makes us question our own prejudices and assumptions.
Exactly. And, this technique of having multiple narrators, each with their own distinct voice and perspective,
Yeah.
it's called polyphonic narrative.
Polyphonic narrative, okay.
And it adds so much richness to the story.
It makes it more realistic in a way.
Yeah, because in real life, there are multiple sides to every story.
Yeah.
And understanding events requires considering different perspectives.
And it makes us think about how we judge others in real life.
Absolutely.
Often based on, limited information or preconceived notions.
Mhm.
Frankenstein challenges us to look beyond the surface and to consider the complexities of individual experiences.
Precisely.
And it reminds us that understanding requires seeking out and listening to multiple voices.
Yes, especially those that have been marginalized or silenced.
Their stories are just as important.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that makes Frankenstein so timeless.
It's a novel that continues to challenge and provoke us even centuries later.
It certainly does. And that's one of the reasons why Frankenstein is still so relevant today.
Yeah.
It really challenges us to think critically about all those different narratives.
And to, recognize those inherent biases.
Absolutely.
It's not just a good story.
Right.
It's a lesson in media literacy.
You got it.
Okay, so we talked about the frame narrative and all these different voices. But Shelley also uses other literary techniques to enhance the story.
Yeah, of course she does.
One that really stands out is foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing.
Those hints and clues that kind of give us a glimpse of what's to come. And she uses those masterfully to create this sense of dread.
Yeah.
And this sense of impending doom.
Right, like a sense of, oh no, this is not going to end well.
Exactly.
And remember Victor's dream, like right after he creates the creature?
Yeah.
He sees Elizabeth, his beloved, and he goes in to kiss her and she turns into a corpse.
Oh, it's so creepy.
It's a very disturbing image.
Yeah.
And it's not just a random creepy image. It's a very deliberate use of foreshadowing.
Okay, how so?
It foreshadows Elizabeth's tragic fate.
Oh, right.
And it serves as this warning
Yeah.
that Victor's ambition is going to have these really devastating consequences.
Like playing God never ends well.
Right.
And there are other examples, like when Victor says, nothing is so painful to the human mind as a great and sudden change.
Yes. Such a great line.
It's like he's talking about himself.
Right. Foreshadowing the dramatic shifts in his own life.
Yeah, and the transformation that the creature undergoes.
And the transformation within Victor himself.
It's amazing how these little details can be so significant.
Yeah, they're like little time bombs just
Right.
waiting to explode.
It makes you want to go back and reread the novel.
Absolutely, with fresh eyes.
Yeah, like what other clues did I miss?
Right.
So we've got foreshadowing, we've got frame narrative, multiple voices. What else?
Are there more?
What other tricks does Shelley have up her sleeve?
Well, Frankenstein is just rich with symbolism.
Oh, yes, symbolism, those layers of meaning.
Exactly, and motifs that add so much depth to the story.
Okay, so tell me more.
One of the most prominent motifs is light.
Light, yes.
So powerful.
It can represent knowledge discovery.
Enlightenment, even.
Yeah, but it can also be blinding, dangerous, even destructive.
Absolutely. It's this paradox.
Yeah, like a double-edged sword.
Exactly. And Shelley uses light in all of these ways.
Okay, give me an example.
Remember how Victor talks about wanting to bring a torrent of light into our dark world?
Oh, yeah, he was obsessed with that idea.
Yeah, but that very light, his scientific knowledge, it ultimately leads to darkness and destruction.
It's like to say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right, and then there's fire, which is so closely tied to light.
Oh, yeah, fire.
Another recurring motif, and just as complex.
Fire can be both, life-giving and destructive.
Absolutely. It can create and destroy.
It's like the duality of nature.
Exactly. And think about the creature's fascination with fire when he first encounters it.
Oh, yeah, he was mesmerized by it.
He's drawn to its warmth and light.
Right.
But he also recognizes its destructive power.
So it kind of mirrors Victor's own internal struggles.
Absolutely. This tension between creation and destruction.
Okay, so we've got light, fire. What other symbols should we be on the lookout for?
Well, one that's easy to miss, but really significant is the locket.
The locket, the one Justine was accused of stealing.
Yes, exactly.
I always thought that was just a plot device.
It is a plot device, but it's also so much more than that.
Okay, tell me more.
The locket represents innocence lost.
Okay.
The interconnectedness of the characters' fates.
I see.
It's passed down from Victor's mother to Justine. Right.
Who's then unjustly accused of murder.
Right. It's like the locket itself is cursed.
It's like this physical representation of the tragedy.
That follows Victor's actions.
Exactly.
I never thought about it that way.
And the creature also interacts with the locket.
Oh, yeah. He finds it in the woods.
And he's drawn to its beauty.
Right. And the image of the woman inside.
Yes. For him, it represents this connection to humanity.
That he so desperately craves.
A tangible link to love and belonging.
Which is, of course, denied to him.
Right.
So this tiny object...
Packs a big punch?
Yeah. It connects the characters, foreshadows tragedy, and highlights the creature's longing.
Yeah, that's the power of symbolism.
It's like these hidden messages. Right. Shelley uses these ordinary objects to convey these really complex themes.
I'm starting to see Frankenstein in a whole new light.
I'm glad to hear that.
There's so much more going on than I realized.
We're not even done yet. There's also this recurring motif of labor.
Labor.
Yeah.
As in work.
Yeah, as in work. And Shelley uses this word repeatedly when she's describing Victor's work in creating the creature.
Oh, interesting.
Both the male creature and then when he starts working on the female creature.
But why is that important?
Well, it's not just about the physical effort.
Okay.
It's about the act of creation itself.
Ah, I see. It's a subtle nod to the female role in childbirth.
You got it.
And Victor's trying to usurp that role.
He's trying to control the process of creation.
In a way that nature intended for women.
Exactly.
So it's another example of Victor overstepping boundaries.
Disrupting the natural order.
Which seems to be like a major theme in the novel.
Right. This ambition, this desire to control
and manipulate life.
Ultimately leading to destruction.
It's a cautionary tale.
It is.
And it's also really interesting to think about how Shelley might be using this motif of labor to comment on societal roles.
Of men and women.
During her time.
Right, challenging those norms.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have frame narrative, polyphonic narrative, foreshadowing symbolism.
It's amazing how much depth there is to Frankenstein's literary style.
It really is a masterpiece of storytelling.
But what does this all mean for us as readers today?
That's the big question.
Why should we care about these literary devices?
Well, it's about more than just appreciating a good story.
Okay.
It's about understanding the power of language.
Right.
And structure.
To shape our understanding of events.
Exactly.
And reminds us that there are always multiple perspectives.
Multiple truths.
Right.
And we should be wary of accepting any single narrative as the absolute truth.
Especially in today's world.
With all the information overload.
And misinformation.
Frankenstein encourages us to be critical thinkers.
Question everything.
Seek out those diverse perspectives.
Don't just take things at face value.
Exactly.
And ultimately, I think Frankenstein is a story about responsibility.
Yeah, Victor's failure to take responsibility for his creation.
It leads to tragedy.
It does.
It's a reminder that our actions have consequences and that we have a duty to consider the impact of our choices.
On ourselves and on others.
That's a message that's as relevant today as it was in Shelley's time.
Absolutely.
Frankenstein isn't just a horror story.
It's a cautionary tale.
About the dangers of unchecked ambition.
The importance of empathy.
And the need for responsibility.
In a world where technology is advancing so rapidly.
And we're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's a story that forces us to ask some really tough questions.
About ourselves.
About our place in the world.
And about the choices we make.
Exactly. And those are questions worth pondering.
You know, it's really amazing how a story written over 200 years ago can still feel so relevant today.
I know. It's really a testament to Mary Shelley's genius.
Like she was tapping into something so fundamental about human nature.
Exactly. Those big questions about life, death, creation, responsibility.
And they're questions that we're still grappling with today.
More than ever, I think.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Frankenstein, here's a thought, a provocative thought for you to consider.
I'm listening.
At the end of the novel, Walton chooses to turn back.
Yeah, from his expedition.
From his own ambitious expedition.
Right.
Do you think he learned from Victor's mistakes?
That's a great question.
Or is he,
I don't know,
doomed to repeat that same cycle?
Of ambition and destruction.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those questions that Shelley leaves open for us to ponder.
It's almost like she's challenging us to think about our own choices.
And the consequences of our ambitions.
Because we all have those ambitions.
We do.
But it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah, between our desires and our responsibilities.
It's a tough question,
It is.
and there's no easy answer.
No, but I think Frankenstein provides us with a framework for thinking about these issues.
It gives us those tools for critical thinking.
Exactly, for questioning our assumptions and for considering the impact of our actions.
And that's why this book is still so powerful today.
I agree. It's a story that stays with you.
It makes you think,
It makes you question.
and it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into Frankenstein.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And until next time, keep reading, keep thinking, and keep questioning,